Well, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. A couple years ago, I had the honor of meeting Roberto, and we started dialoguing about some trends that we were seeing, he nationally and myself here in Casa Grande, and talking about the trauma that our students went through with COVID and the change of life and things like that. And how do we, as an educational organization, move past COVID and get our students back up academically where they need to be, mental health-wise where they need to be, so they can thrive. And so when I started here last spring, I had some conversations with Roberto. He came out in July and did the keynote presentation for our staff. And that's where our coming out from the behind the counter started with a story about his upbringing and some of the challenges that he faced as a youth and going on to get his doctorate degree at the University of Wisconsin. Madison, I think. And so so we had that, and so he spoke to that, and then he came back in November, and he spoke to almost all of our students in different assemblies, talking to them about how to thrive in challenges, how to take trauma and pain and make it pro-pain and moving forward. And some of the ideas that we generated then was doing a community-wide event, which we did last night with Tommy, who is from our PACE program.
Good evening, everybody.
And so it started kind of as a healing festival, but it went to more of a bless open mic event last night that started at 5:30. I thought it would be over at 7 o'clock, but it didn't get over to 9:30 last night from the number of community members who wanted to participate in this open mic thing and share their talents. Because one of the things we know from our research, and I know Roberto's going to cover it, for students to thrive, number one, they need to know what their spark is. They need to have relationships to develop their sparks and other things. And then number three, they need to have a voice. And so last night, we provided an opportunity for our kids to showcase their talents. And it was really, I heard it was a good evening. Unfortunately, I had a city council meeting last night, wasn't able to see a whole lot of the event. And then Roberto yesterday spoke to the Vista Grande staff. This afternoon, he spoke to the union staff, and then tomorrow, he's going to be speaking to the PACE staff as well. But he is from Madison, Wisconsin. His company is stationed out of Chicago. And so recently, Roberto gave a survey to 1,600 of our students asking about their well-being and how they are doing well-being. So he's going to talk a little bit about those results now, and then open it up for some dialogue and how best can we support our students so they're thriving, successful, in their well-being. So Roberto, I turn it over to you, and thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Jeff. All right. Well, I want to thank the leadership for having me here, and thank you all for being here on this beautiful evening. Give yourselves a round of applause for being present, mind, body, soul. Again, my name is Roberto Rivera, Dr. Rivera. Wonderful to be with you all. I think maybe to give a little context to some of the conversation, to help you understand a little bit of my journey to be here, bless you, I want to just open up with a story. Is that okay? So this is a story of a good friend of mine named Carlos. Carlos, when he was in elementary school, was told that he was LD, learning deficient. In middle school, his misdirected entrepreneurship skills got him kicked out. A couple of you caught it. All right. He ran away from home, got arrested, went through drug rehab, and at the tender age of 14, tried to take his own life. How many of us know a lot of young folks get exposed to a little bit too soon, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. Fortunately, my friend was not successful in taking his own life, so that's not the end of his story. My friend told me that he realized later on that he wasn't LD, learning deficient, but LD, he learned different. Anyone ever heard of that term, LD, before? I'm hearing all kinds of bells going off. So let's just practice that real quick. I want you to practice this the next time a young person comes to you and says, I'm learning deficient. Say you're not learning deficient.
You're not learning deficient.
Say you just learned different.
You just learned different.
Let's turn around and say, I'm not learning deficient. I just learned different. And so this young man got this idea about 18 inches from his head. It's kind of like a Dr. Seuss pipe, and it finally entered his heart. And this young man realized that he could be successful in his education, eventually used his God-given gifts to start engaging in entrepreneurial ventures that were positive and serving his community. And my friend ended up winning an award from Congress people, eventually a president. And now this guy who was told he was LD just wrapped up his PhD in education last year. And so, if we have more time and enough, tortillas, I don't know if y'all probably already came in. Some of y'all brought your dinner, which is fine. I'm sure you have stories too of young folks who went from surviving to thriving. But the reason why I want to open up with this story, because it's not just any story of any Carlos. This is the story of Roberto Carlos Rivera. This is my story. All right? And so I stand before you today giving you this little glimpse into my journey, because I've been blessed to have people in my life who helped me to go from hopeless and helpless to helpful and hopeful. People who have the ability to not just judge a book by its cover. How many of us know it's important not to judge a book by its cover? Who could see that I had some passion and some gifts, and even more importantly, within the context of relationship, created an experience where I could see those gifts and that passion for myself. And I realized instead of making a bunch of noise, that I could find my authentic voice and start to make a difference in my community. And so part of what I'm sharing with you and what you heard a little bit with Jeff in his opening remarks, again, thank you for creating the context, is that there's 3 essential things young people need in order to thrive. They need positive relationships. Get this, with people other than parents.
Sure.
How many of us know when you are a teenager, oftentimes you don't want to hear everything your parents have to say. And this is when other folks can come in as mentors. Maybe they're a teacher, maybe they're a coach. And they can have a profound impact in a young person's life. I'm blessed to have had many different folks who took me under their wing. Coaches and teachers, and even a woman who was working behind a desk at a community college, came around the counter and saw some potential in me. The other thing that young people need to know is that they have something that they're good at. Something that's, dare I say, a God-given gift, passion. And with the right support, the spark of passion can turn into a bonfire. But how many of us know sparks are delicate? And what happens if we don't nurture the spark? And then young people need to know they have a voice, that they can speak up in the places and spaces that they navigate through that are important to them. And so, it's not that sophisticated, but these 3 things, there's been robust research with thousands of young people all across America. And so these researchers from the Search Institute, which is one of the leading positive youth development organizations in the world, they conclude if they have these 3 things, they do better on every psychological, social, emotional, academic, every behavioral outcome that has been studied. I want to also address the people at home. And so that is amazing. They don't need 333 things. They need how many things?
3.
And yet, the researchers conclude that only 7% of adolescents, this is in a study with thousands of young people, only 7% have these 3 things. And so I know in reflection of my own life how these 3 things have transformed me from surviving to thriving. And so for me to get this research, I'm like, we need to do better than only 7% of youth have this sort of thing. And so in order for me to try to honor those who sowed into my life, I figured the best way to do that was not just to beat the odds, but to change the odds. And so I devoted myself pretty early on, although there was a little bumpy beginning in middle school and high school, as you heard, to serving young people. I started working in out-of-school time programs when I was 19, 20 years old. And then pretty soon found myself realizing how important young people's experiences at school were. And so we started going into schools and mentoring young people and serving them using the arts and getting them to think critically and getting them to be creative problem solvers in their community. And we started working with schools that were deemed the worst schools and quote unquote the worst students in the worst schools. And coming in with these 3 things. Again, how many things? 3. Within 10 weeks, we saw GPAs go up a full point cumulatively. Okay, so we tested this out in cities a little bigger than Casa Grande. Then I went to Chicago. How many of us know Chicago? We got any Chicago Cub fans? I don't know. Maybe not, probably more Diamondbacks. But in Chicago, again, in some of the toughest schools, with some of the toughest populations in these schools, using these 3 things, we saw young people who were only attending school 55% of the time. This is in a school where the average amount of attendance, come on in, the average amount of attendance is 81%. And within 30 days, these young people in this program went from 55% attendance to 96%. We started working in alternative schools. Schools where you have to be kicked out of 2 other schools just to be invited in. It's really hard to get into these schools. It's very competitive. Again, training the whole staff in how to implement these things and operationalize them. First time ever these schools had 100% graduation rate. So then I went to grad school and I started writing about how to operationalize these theories, because how many of us know there's a big difference between theory and practice? So we started writing chapters about, okay, how do we take these theoretical ideas from Search Institute and how do we operationalize this with kids from different backgrounds and different experiences? Kids who might be called LD or ADHD or EBD or ODD or XYZ, NHIJK, elemental P. There's a lot of different labels we give young people. And so even though we saw this success early on, I became increasingly disturbed and frustrated because we go back to these schools 5 years later, and there would be barely a remnant of what we had going on. And so I became very frustrated and started talking to other leaders who were, quote unquote, scaling up effective programs. And we realized that there was this common experience of having issues around sustainability. How many of us know that sometimes administration leaves and the whole program, the whole ideas change? Or a principal or teacher, key educators leave and then all of a sudden the school feels different. And then there's all kinds of alarms going off in people's heads because they're like, man, what's going on? How do we keep things sustained over here? And so I had a burning question that started to emerge. And this is a question that changed my life. And this question was, what education ecosystems exist globally where all students are thriving academically, socially, physically, emotionally? And where are these efforts being sustained? And I was asking this question during the context of COVID-19 and all kinds of craziness happening in the United States. How many of us remember just a couple years ago, a lot of us were home alone for a long period of time. And as it turned out, talking to different scholars and going through the research and seeing if these folks could still do this work during COVID, we found 4 ecosystems that were doing this work around the world. I wish I could tell you there was 400. If you know of an ecosystem that's been around doing this work, helping young people thrive for over 20 years, please let me know. Because I would love to learn and partner with them. But the 4 ecosystems that we found, one was in New Zealand. One was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Indian country. One was in Hawaii. And then we found a community-based education organization that had been going into the schools successfully, sustainably for over 25 years in Cape Town, South Africa. And so none were in the mainland of the United States. What's that?
Mexico's.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah. But none were in a traditional public education system. That was kind of a non-traditional piece. Yep. Sorry about that. It's been a long day. But you know what they say in New Mexico? We didn't cross the border crossed us.
Sure.
So we started looking at the common practices across these 4 sites. And across the board, they were creating the sense of beloved community. How many of us know community is important? Sure. Especially community where you feel loved and supported. And they had intentionally sought to cultivate a sense of well-being with the staff, the students, and even the parents. How many of us know parents are very important to the education outcomes of students? And so they centered and systematized these things with a focus on communal well-being, creating a culture of love, a sense of belonging for everybody, focusing on people's strengths and assets. How many of us know assets are not only economic? And creating these places where people didn't have to check part of who they are at the door. They could bring their full selves into these educational spaces. And creating relationships that realize that you don't just live and sleep. Your whole life is not school. You have a life outside of school. And so recognizing some challenges and opportunities supporting young folks. In addition, operationalizing the spark and meeting the well-being needs of folks. How many of us know it's important to meet those basic needs that we have? We have a mind, a body, a heart, and even a soul, right? And cultivating that sense of passion, giving people agency, not just looking at the areas of deficit, but using the assets to mobilize those basic needs being met. And then finally, there was a push towards organizational well-being, a push towards people having a voice and influencing policies and practices and programs and pedagogy, a lot of P's, but allowing people to have some autonomy and participation, another P, in the places that they're in. And so we've been working to document this with research. Now I got this PhD, everybody's like, well, what university are you going to go work at? I'm like, I don't want to go work at a university. Let's do research in the community, with the school districts, with folks who are dedicated to allowing this change to happen, particularly given the context that we just came out of with COVID and everything else. So we have a few objectives for our time. One is that we're going to review a few student well-being findings from a survey that some youth a couple years co-created with us, with Casa Grande Alliance. And then we're also going to reflect, connect a little bit, and start to dream how some of these outcomes could be improved. How many of us know it's important to dream, not just individually, but collectively? And then thirdly, we're going to start moving towards taking action. As you know, there's some leaders in the district here. Raise your hand if you're a leader in the district in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So there's leaders here. We're capturing this with the camera. We're recording this. We're going to have some fancy ways to capture your insights so that we can start to go from surviving to thriving and impacting both a systemic and a cultural change with hopes that we can add a 5th ecosystem to the global scan. Imagine if Casa Grande could be a place that people come to from all over the world to examine the well-being and academic outcomes that you all have been able to achieve. So if you're willing to go a little higher with me in conversation, somebody say higher.
Higher.
If you're willing to go a little deeper, say deeper. So I'm going to pause because we're talking a lot. And, fortunately, this is not a Zoom meeting. Sorry for the people joining virtually. But we're just going to turn to our neighbor. I know this is it's been a while for some of us. We're not getting into a breakout room turn to your neighbor. What's resonating? What's emerging so far in this conversation? I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. All right? Turn to your neighbor. Go.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, definitely.
And bring stuff up forward. A lot of people use things as crutches all the time, and that's just old crutches.
What's resonating for you?
Well, we're not doing as good as what we could because we're doing not as good as we could
Grandmother, mother.
because of the impact and how dedicated.
This your last one? Your last baby?
Then
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah. So how are you going to feel when he graduates?
parents.
Ah.
I don't want to let the you have to get the teachers to buy the parents to buy it.
That's right.
What I like in there is that he's talking about the he mentioned soul. They don't mention soul in the schools. They don't bring up teaching things about God. But the schools won't allow that. It's just like
This is not your first rodeo, is it? Okay, yeah. Well, we should be doing some research and getting your wisdom on this.
he didn't bring out.
Yeah, he's 17, so it's nice.
Getting back into college.
I come from a family of 8.
School. And
I want to invite us to come back. We'll have some more time to continue to converse and fellowship.
didn't bring this.
But before I transition here, just curious, like what's emerging for you? What's resonating in your heart?
Knowledge.
Do you want to say a little more?
Knowledge is basically the one thing that everyone, regardless of who they are, what they are, whatever, have to basically survive and produce and be productive to the world.
Mm-hmm. I noticed you didn't say information.
I didn't say information on purpose because knowledge is information. Look it up in the dictionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I heard a equation once. Information plus context equals knowledge. It's a whole different thing to learn how to apply information. And you can't always Google knowledge. You get a lot of information. Interesting. Other things.
Wisdom would be another one. You have some people thinking that only adults can have wisdom, but just thinking of wisdom of the child for what they learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
That, like for example, you have a child that learned how to, let's say, do art like drawing or, things like that. And then they go home and talk to their parents about their mother especially. Yeah, we learned how to sew today. And we did this and that, and for the first time, then mother would say, oh, let me show you all things I know about sewing. Mm-hmm. And it's not just something you learn to do, but just to help you, like if you're an adult, and let's say you lose a button, or a button breaks off, you know how to put it back on. Simple things like that, but
That's right.
it adds up later on to other things.
It does add up. Yeah, so I hear a lot of things in what you just shared, and thank you again. One, that information is different than knowledge. And knowledge is different than wisdom. And what I'm kind of realizing is like, it's one thing to have information that you can apply in context, but it takes wisdom to know when to apply that knowledge at the right time, right? And secondly, the other thing that I hear you saying, it's not just the elders and the older people who have wisdom. The young folks can it's bi-directional, right? The wisdom literature says we got to be more like children. One of my native friends and mentors says, okay, when the leaders come together, sometimes they bring in the children to remind them that their decisions that they make today are going to most impact the babies, right? And as you said, these things add up. Okay, I saw a couple other hands and we're going to keep moving. Here, and then I think I saw a hand somewhere. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to build off, the knowledge and wisdom and learning differently. We were talking about that. You learn differently, and it's a stepping stone to where a student might do well in this class, and they see success there. They can take that success and that confidence, and they can move into maybe another success in another curriculum.
Yeah.
And so they can build, just like that, the low-hanging fruit. Helps stimulate that spark. It gets the kids maybe motivated to do better in other classes, which would puts them on a pathway to success.
Right, and I think that perfectly complements what this gentleman just said. One thing builds onto another, and then that one success, that spark gets fanned into a flame. So with your permission,
I think that one of the first things that needs to be done is respect for the student and respect for the teacher. And I believe, this is my belief, that there's a lot of different ways of learning. Some people learn by reading, other people, all of this, some by doing. And what they have to do is learn to own the things that they learn, rather than do it for a half hour so that they can pass a test. They have to own it. They have to be able to use it, apply it in their life. And when you do those things, then that's something that you always have as a value to yourself and to people around you. So I think that's one of the things that we need to work on within the schools, to build the schools and make them grow. Now, you mentioned the groups that you were talking about that continued. Well, we didn't look at all the homeschools. We didn't look at all the schools and the churches and stuff like this that kept going. Instead, we look, you mentioned COVID quite a number of times. We look at that as a crutch to fall back for the reason why we didn't accomplish something. We need to throw that crutch away. We need to look at the future and how we're going to achieve what we need to achieve. And I don't think one night in here will do it. I'm thinking, this is something that we could discuss and we could work and get teachers involved and get buy-in from both parents and teachers. And we could work on something, we could build something in Casa Grande. But it's going to take a lot of buy-in from the community.
So I want to just honor what's been said. There's going to be lots of opportunity to continue the conversation, but a couple of things you said I think are really important to underscore. One is to honor the staff and to honor the students and honor different ways of learning and being and knowing. How many of us know sometimes you can know something so deeply you can feel it in your bone marrow, right? And it's important to honor that. Sometimes it's not just what you say, but how you say it. The transfer is not just information, but knowledge and wisdom. It might even just be a touch. Anyone ever just been touched and you just get a download?
Hallelujah.
Okay? So what I'm saying though too is that it's important, as you said, we don't just focus on the moment, but we focus on what is ahead and we stop making excuses. And that we commit to being on this journey together. And so I'm kind of getting a little excited here. Part of my excitement with this is that Mr. Lavender and others have committed to creating a well-being committee that includes the voices of parents, that includes the voices of staff, administration, and even students. Because the students have wisdom too, don't they?
They should have a voice.
Yeah, they should have a voice. And so as we continue here, again, just reminding us of things that we already know to be true, these relationships are important for our babies. Especially relationships with people other than parents. How many of us have ever been a parent or are a parent of a teenager? You ever had the experience where you say something to them about 552 times, and then Bob Sjogren or the coach come in, they say the same thing, and then the kid's like, "Oh, this is mind-blowing." Anyone ever have that? You're like, "What? I've already, dude." So kids are just wired when they're teenagers to take information from other people other than their parents a little differently, right? And so how do we create that context? Because the research says, now get this, only 19% of adolescents in the study with thousands of adolescents, 19% have this kind of a relationship with a grandparent or a coach or a teacher or a mentor. Or reciprocally put, 81% don't have anyone they can go to in a crisis, don't feel like they have someone that really sees them or hears them. They don't have someone to push them to taking a positive risk in their lives. How many of us know it's important for kids to take positive risks? We were just, Tommy hosted and put together a beautiful community event yesterday. There was no violence, no bad language. But kids were taking positive risks. Some kids were doing their poetry. They were shaking, but they were still sharing their truth. And it was powerful. Everybody left feeling empowered and peaceful and connected. And so, from the findings of our most recent survey, we saw that 81% of students reported having positive relationships with adults and peers. This is pretty high. This is looking at connections with family, the school, and the community context. Why don't we clap it up? This is pretty good. I mean, in comparison to 19%, whoa! This is like totally flipped that upside down. But how many of us know just because you're doing something good doesn't mean you can't strive to do something great? There's always room for growth. How many of us know it's important to not get stagnant? Right? That everything in life is either growing or starting to shrink, right? Growth is important. So how do we lean into this? And so we have some statisticians on the team, and there's a lot of different things here. But one thing I wanted to just point out is you can see cultural identity, community engagement, voice, and hope. Resilience. There's this kind of the spiritual aspect, right? But if you look at the correlation coefficient, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, it's at 0.615. So this is the highest positive correlation, meaning that one construct or one idea is influencing these other ideas. And what the research is showing us is that community engagement and voice helps to drive hope being increased. Community engagement and voice is also helping to drive the supportive people and that sense of connection and community. How many of us know sometimes you got to step out before things start to happen in your life? You got to step out and just kind of put yourself out there before things start growing externally and internally. So this is a photo that was taken last night right after our open mic. As Jeff, Mr. Lavender mentioned, we were supposed to be done at 7 o'clock. And this thing went on to closer to 9 o'clock. Oh no, it went to 9:30, didn't it?
9:30.
Yeah, it went to 9:30. So people didn't want to leave. And I love Tommy. He was like, man, we still got people keep signing up. And he's not going to send them home without doing their thing. And so everybody felt like, okay, we're going to take a positive risk. And so people giving each other high fives who never met before. And you could just see that spark in everybody's eyes. It was beautiful. And so this is already starting to happen. And so how do we continue to do this? How do we continue to also use your experience and your ideas to continue to bolster these positive relationships in young people. So I'm curious, again, for you to have a little more dialogue, why don't we take 2 minutes this time? What stands out about what's been covered, and what are your ideas on how to improve these supportive relationships, aka communal well-being? So I'm gonna give you about 2 minutes. Have a little conversation if you want. Why don't we do this? Talk to someone new. I mean, we're talking about community, so let's build a little community. How about you talk to someone you don't know? Can we do that? Is that okay? Let's shake it up a little bit. Go talk to someone you don't know about some of your reflections and insights. This may require you to get up and move around. If you're capable of doing that, please do that. Otherwise, raise your hand and someone will come to you.
Someone's standing out.
Where's mom? With the kids. I have kids.
Do you got a school here?
Oh, no, but I have to at my house and I changed some of their lives because they didn't have.
Okay, fantastic. So you work with Okay, so you work with Bob Shop?
Like I was telling you.
I work for the paper. The dispatch? Yes.
So what does the press think?
The kids, when they were younger.
Like, I tell you a lot of
It's not essential, but it's something convenient like right here.
Everybody else in this business.
So what do you want, like a big piece of
It could be like a
But I still think.
big flip chart. If not, don't worry about it. I'll just record it on the phone.
Yeah,
There's only one time I think.
Yeah, but you're recording, I'm recording. We'll have it.
Okay, yeah. Activities with your kids. So then you get to notice it. In the show too. There's so many parties after
Well, they did that.
Yeah, that's really good. I just feel as a how is it that when these kids come to town, what's wrong with them? I can't expect these kids to be
Yeah, that's a good point. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you had some rich conversation just now. All right, so I'm just interested to hear, and we're going to do a little quick pit stop here before we continue. We've got a couple other stops on this train. But what are some of the insights, some of the ideas that emerged around improving this communal well-being? We can just popcorn it out, or you can raise your hand.
Answering the $64 million question, how do we get the parents more involved?
Yeah.
Definitely Caroline. Definitely.
And you know, it's interesting because you know a lot of these schools that are so exemplary, they got parents. And this is part of counter. How many of us know sometimes you have to think counterculturally in order to make an impact, right? And sometimes we just want to start with such big numbers, and we get like dissuaded and we feel like kind of down if only 5 people show up. But in the models that I've seen with some of these exemplary ecosystems, you know, they started with like 3 to 5 parents who became white hot. How many of us know white hot is even hotter than blue hot? And they became so white hot about engaging with the school and the district. And then it was the parents, forget the terminology, but it was the parents that evangelized the other parents. And they started catching other parents on fire. And so how can we kind of flip the script and realize that there are already parents that care in the communities that we deem hard to reach? And how do we support them and encourage them to lighting a fire to the parents that they already know? All right? Other thoughts, ideas?
Communicating.
Okay, say more. How can we improve the communication to heighten the communal well-being?
Parents communicating with the school.
Mm-hmm. Is it only parents communicating with the school, or does it go both ways?
That goes both ways.
So it's bi-directional. And any of us ever heard of the terminology of love languages? this is kind of a funny idea, but metaphor. But like this notion of love languages, like sometimes, for my wife, I'll write her the most elaborate poem. I like words, and I'll write her this love poem, and she read it, and like, okay, yeah, and she read it once, and it's in a drawer, and maybe I get a hug. But if I wash the dishes, oh my goodness, now my wife is like, hey, look at that. Right? So there's different ways that strike a chord in people. And I have a theory, just like there's different love languages, there's different communication languages. Some people, I know if I email them, they will never, ever, ever respond. But if I text them, they will respond instantly. Some people, I know I have to call them up. Right? So how do we start exhibiting this ability to communicate using different modalities, right? And do you think that might be helpful in getting more parents involved? So maybe
I won't, sometimes I won't, I'll be honest, I won't answer a text.
what's your communication love language?
Hey, you gotta call me.
We gotta call you. Okay, so it might be a call. It might be a text. It might be an email. I mean, this is a really old school form of communication. It might be face to face.
I'd rather do that too, but
Yeah. Other ideas. We can go here than here. Yes.
We have a large community of grandparents who have become the parents. How do we fill the hole that they used to fill for their grandkids? Because you can't be cool grandma and take them out for ice cream and be the parent every day. And we definitely have a need to support those grandparents.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. So, am I getting the amen on that statement?
Yeah.
Okay, I see your hands up, but someone had their hand up first behind you. Yes.
I'm cheating a little bit here because I thought of it right as we were clapping. To get the students to kind of respect us and show us their support of us in the classroom, we have to show the students not only we're supportive of them in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. Going to their games, going to their band recitals, if they're involved in other programs outside of the school, stopping by their work and, having them bring you a meal or whatever it is, whatever their job is.
Very much so.
And visit them at places where they're doing their spark, as we're saying, while they're, they visit me while I'm doing my spark.
I'm kind of making an assumption here, but are you a staff member or educator yourself?
A teacher along with a lot of other titles.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, it's a whole. Is it really an authentic relationship if you only ever see somebody in one context?
Let me go back.
Yeah.
I'm a parent, I'm a grandma, and I'm a great grandma,
Come on.
and I come from a family of 8. Now, this is pretty cool, I like it, but what I don't see anymore is the school and the educators being involved with the kids, after hours. And this brings you back to being closer together, knowing these kids not on a education hours, but trying to be themselves. Now, back in my day when I was going to school with my older siblings, the football coach used to take them to their house. And they had barbecues, they had whatever, and the school didn't object to that. And they got to know these kids and my siblings on a different level, on a personal level. Now, I bring some of these kids, my son plays football, I bring some of these kids to my house, and I feed them, I know what they're about, I talk to them, hey, Miss Ibanez, this is going on, and this is going on, this is how I feel, take time to talk to your parents. But if you don't have that,
That's right.
you're not gonna get it.
So I hear you kind of even expanding off of this idea. I mean, both underscoring the importance of the after hours piece with the staff, but also saying, like, look, how is the school or the district going into the community to build relationships with the parents during times where they are available to engage? One thing that was horrible about Chicago Public Schools, first of all the school board members are appointed by the mayor. So it's all these corporate buddies are on the school board. No one's elected. And so since they don't really want any input, they have all the quote-unquote community sessions at like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday when no one can like get off of work, you know what I mean? And so imagine this after-hours strategy of going to the communities and building relations. That's a whole nother thing, right? Going and being proximate. Okay, yes.
We have what I've been told is the underserved community, and about 42% of that community do not read or write their own language. They speak their own language, but they have no ability of understanding and speaking, or writing and reading their own language. That's a community that is totally underserved. And somehow, some way, we need to get in contact with the community and help that community, because those parents, many of those, are going to be more in tune to their kids and what their kids are doing than some of the other communities that we have in this city.
Yeah, that's really, really insightful. And think about that. What if a school or a district could be calibrated to not just meeting the needs of the students and the staff, but what if it could be calibrated to meeting the needs of the parents and the families? And this is what we saw in some of these exemplary schools. They had things like Parent University, where parents can get their certifications in, literacy and reading and writing in their language and in English. And then there's other certifications that they get too. I don't have all the certifications memorized, but what do you think is the loyalty the parents have to a system that is building their skills? Oh, they're showing up. They have that loyalty and that relationship, and it becomes reciprocal. Yeah.
Because of AI, we now have the capability in just a pen, about the size of what you have, is to flash it on a page that may be in Spanish, and it will read it back to you in English. That is a phenomenal benefit when we're dealing with people that may not have the same capabilities as what most of us have. And when we're talking about that underserved community, that could be of a phenomenal teaching for them that would bring them closer to the school district.
That's right.
And cement relationships, which I think everything is built on relationships. If you're not willing to have relationships and you don't want to build on those, you're not going to go anyplace. It's all relationships.
All relationships. And so I hear you saying too that we need to be hip about the technology that's available, to utilize the technology to better serve our students and their families. Here and then here, and then we're going to continue the conversation.
Can I just point something out today?
Okay, yes.
This probably, you need to hear this. This morning, I was at the school. I go to that school all the time. I need to go check on my kid. I need to see his grades. I need to see.
Yeah.
But every time I go in there, we get a Mexican. I speak both. I speak Spanish and English, okay?
Yeah.
But why these Mexican parents go in there? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna get it. You have a Mexican secretary there, but don't speak a lick of Spanish, so they gotta go find somebody. This is not.
Yeah.
This ain't, or they walk in there, hey, with a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I need my kid doctor's appointment that the kid already wrote this morning before they went to school, and give it to the secretary. So then there's no communication there. It's like it's crippling them.
Yeah.
So when these kids say something, parents don't know what the heck they're talking about.
So that's an important insight too. We can use technology, but how do we build capacity, ensure that the hires that we make can communicate to the students and the students' families that are coming into our educational spaces? I saw your hand, and then your hand, and then, okay, yep, right here. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, we waste resources.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, it's like when I was a kid, I thought I knew everything. Now that I'm older, I realize that I still don't know as much as what I wished I did. But boy, if I knew when I was a kid what I know now, how far could I have gone in life? Indians, I like to bring them up because they're very wise people. And, the elders in the tribes were some of the most respected and sought after people there was because of their wisdom and their knowledge. We've lost that in our society. Now kids think when you're older, you don't know anything. Man, they don't know who this actress is and who that actor is and who this singer is, and I don't, but I know a lot of stuff about life, and things that make a difference, and I think, I think we waste a lot of our resources. How we tap into that, I don't know. It's a bridge that needs to be built between the children and the elders.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of extrapolating from what you're saying too is that, time is also a resource, right? We always think of resources merely financial, but what if time and intention, some of the projects that happen in schools would allow the students to engage with the grandparents and the great-grandparents and the elders to understand some of those stories, right? So does this kind of get to your point a little bit?
Yeah,
like incorporating more like a service learning or project-based learning efforts into the curriculum. Am I understanding you?
Yeah, well, let's say a class is going through something that has to do with animals and animal husbandry and things like this. And you could get that old rancher that's been living out there for, 90 years that works with this stuff, they could come and talk to them.
Yeah.
Because that type of connectivity between the younger generation and the older generation is something that we've lost, and we need to get that back somehow.
That's really interesting too, because that goes back to the data that says that community engagement is like a major lever for supportive relationships and hope and all this sort of thing. And there's research around community engagement academics. And so what if we could be more intentional about doing service learning projects in the community as part of the curriculum to help bolster these other outcomes? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm going to come to her. I'm just, yeah. After you, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking like a family outing. With the parents take their child together. Maybe even possibly invite their friends or friends for depending on how many friends they have. Maybe willing to go while you're on the outing. And a couple of scenarios I'll bring up. You can't make this stuff up. It really happens this way.
Yeah.
But like the father might take his son out somewhere, go camping, along with his friends. And the child would be getting involved with his father, but with the thing that his father knows about camping, he could have learned that himself back in the day when he was a Boy Scout. And then, in so doing that a few times, that time they said, wow, that was cool. My dad taught me how to build a fire, how to put it in, how to go fix it, or how to use a bow and arrow to shoot for some food. So later on, that child is not bad. You said you were a Boy Scout. How can I be one? You can't make it up.
You can't make it up.
That way.
Yeah.
Or it'll come to a point another scenario where this child's father may have been in the military.
Yeah.
And, you know, they go out and camp or whatever, but they learn basic things in the military, like, you know, how to fish, how to look for food in the forest, if they're going out on a, let's say on the run somewhere, how to look for fresh water to drink. You know, things like that, how to find mountains or hills, what have you. Later on that time they decide he wants to join the ROTC. And there's a goal right there.
Yeah.
For him to join the military.
So,
it happens that way.
Yeah.
No.
No, I like this, and in many ways that kind of connects with what others are sharing, like doing projects in the community. And so what comes to mind is there's a big body of research around experiential learning. This goes back to what you were talking about, right? Like getting people to learn about math and science and building. It can all happen concurrently, especially outdoors. And sometimes in the context of relationships, in the context of being, you know, where all your senses are activated, you don't just know, you know, and your whole body knows those things, right? And so how do we incorporate maybe some service learning, some experiential learning? Maybe we can focus some of the professional learning on how, you know, being intentional about this is what I'm kind of hearing. Is this in alignment with what you're saying? Yeah? Okay. So I'm gonna go to this young lady here who's been very patient, and then we're gonna continue, because here's the thing. We're gonna be gathering your insights using technology. We got a QR code, so even if you're not heard right now, we will hear you. We're gonna collect everybody's insights, and then we're gonna do another round of analysis with this qualitative data. Thank you so much for coming. Yes?
All I was going to share was just some really positive things that I've seen. So I got the privilege of getting to chaperone homecoming and seeing the kids having such a positive experience. Every single kid dancing, having a safe, like, you know, fun environment. And then that was followed up with just a couple weeks ago, they did a bonfire. And Miss Sewer, who put it on for student council, it was amazing. She pulled out tennis rackets, volleyballs. The kids were on the courts just having such an amazing time, like hanging out, socializing, you know, and enjoying each other's company. So really building that community. I mean, it's outside of school hours, but it was so awesome to get to see that and see the kids be happy and engaged and safe and just having a really good time. And so I think that, you know, the school is a place where we can come together and do a lot of things. And I hope that the school continues to have lots of opportunities, dances and things like that.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And this kind of underscores what's been shared with the barbecues and events, and expanding and including family outings with sports and bonfires. And so the metaphor that comes to mind is we oftentimes think of family engagement like you gotta only come to a town hall or this designated time. But what this is the huddle. The actual game, if you will, is us. I mean, imagine if all of football was the huddle, it'd be pretty boring to watch. You want to see the strategy then be implemented, and you want to see the action, you know what I mean? So this is the huddle, but the real work is going out, building in the community, building these relationships, doing stuff, and then guess what? The huddle gets bigger. All right, do I have your permission to continue on? You got something burning? Yes.
I just have a question.
Yes.
I'm seeing a hole, and let me explain.
Okay.
You're using the word communicate. We have 7% of the students that their homes don't even have a phone or a computer. How do you communicate it out?
Okay.
That's true.
Your language barrier is a major problem.
Yeah.
Because many of these parents and grandparents do not speak English at all.
Yeah.
The last time I checked, I think it was 35% of Arizona cities raising their.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And so, again, with your feedback, a lot of these ideas, we can start to prioritize what is going to be the focus for the next year, And how do we want to be intentional in moving ahead? With your permission, can we continue?
Yes.
All right, let's continue here. Quickly about sparks, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. But a spark, as you already know, is something that gets a young person excited, gives them meaning, passion in their life. I love this stat that a majority of young people in the United States find their spark in the creative arts. Raise your hand if you know young people who love to be creative and artistic. And secondly, although this gets a lot more of our resources, usually in cities and in districts, is that secondly is young people find their spark in athletics. Raise your other hand if you know young people who love athletics. And I want you to pay attention to what happens when we lean in and support young people. So this is the third paragraph here. Research with over 3,000 youth, I'm just going to read this, indicates that youth who spend time focusing on their sparks, let's read this together. Demonstrate, let's go to right now. Increase academic achievement, decrease depression in their communities, all right, let's continue, and a drop in violence. How many of us like these outcomes? And again, it hits home. Young people need ample opportunities to take positive risk. How many of us in this room, you probably wouldn't even graduate high school if you didn't have a sport when you were a high school student that you were involved with, right? Or how many of us, you had some other outlet, maybe it was something artistic or creative, and that helped you to stay engaged and out of trouble.
I had a chancla.
For those who don't know what a chancla is, she had a flip-flop that was going to give her a sobering reality check.
At school probably who could relate to that too.
Yeah.
Because we were those kids, we get to school and they'd be like, why are you at school? Because my dad said I had to come. We can relate to that.
Yeah. And there's a key word in what you just said. You can relate. And that's huge, right? So this is kind of taking a couple far-fetched ideas and bringing them together. Stick with me. But there's this theory of multiple intelligence that comes out of Harvard University, Howard Gardner. So what this slide does is take the multiple intelligences from Howard Gardner at Harvard and hip-hop culture, okay? So this is exemplifying how different ways of being smart manifest in sometimes cultures that are different than our own. So the DJ, the music producer, is what Howard Gardner would call music smart or musical intelligence. The MC or the poet is word smart. The graffiti, or more politically correct, aerosol artist, is picture smart. Breaking, popping, juking, I don't know if I'd put twerking in this category, is body smart or kinesthetic intelligence. Street knowledge is environment smart, knowing your environment. There's a spiritual element to hip hop. There's gospel and blues, connecting with something larger than yourself, what Howard Gardner calls big question smart. Then there's street entrepreneurship. To be really good at that, you gotta be numbers smart. And then there's a promoter, and that's people smart. And so all of this are different forms of intelligence. And if you don't have someone who can relate, they can't always see that intelligence or that spark. And if you don't see it, or if you misunderstand it, sometimes people will put water on it. And so how do we start building capacity in folks to relate? And this was our key. When we were working in inner city Chicago, we're using these different elements, using these different sparks being identified and cultivated to engage kids. This was part of the secret sauce. Don't tell nobody. This was our secret sauce, getting kids to raise their GPAs a full point in 10 weeks. Getting them to show up to school 96% of the time was focusing on their strengths.
Can I tell you something?
Yes, ma'am.
To get them kids to raise their grades, you need a lot of parent involvement.
Mm-hmm. That's part of it.
Because at my house, I got one lab. I don't do with C's.
Yeah.
I don't do with D's. You got a D. I don't know what you're gonna do, but come Friday, that grade, when it comes to my phone,
Yeah.
it better not be there no more.
Uh-huh. All right.
You know. But but there again, people ain't got no phone, and you get these you know, that
Going to
don't,
your point, they may not have a phone.
you know, and then
Right.
by the time they get this mail through the mail, you know, it's like 2 weeks later.
Right. You get this- yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Not email, some old school mail.
Yeah,
Yes.
old school mail. And then, well, where I live. in
That's
Arizona
another kind
City,
of love communication language I forgot about. That's right.
I live in Arizona City, that, you gotta go to the post office.
You gotta go, what's your P.O. box? Uh-huh.
And if you don't put your P.O. box in and you live in Arizona City, them parents ain't getting no mail.
That's the truth right there. So look, this is some of the findings. 48.4% of students reported having opportunities for nurturing a positive cultural ethnic identity. So what that tells me is that there's a lot of sparks that manifest, that dance, and different kinds of art that they're not able to really feel like is being recognized, and they can't fan into a flame because people aren't seeing, they don't have that ability, like this young lady said, to relate and to help turn that into a fire. And what happens to a spark if we don't nurture it? It goes out. This is important. So part of the findings, again, we're talking about 1,800 students did the survey. And 52%, as it relates to mental health, report themselves having or observing peers who are experiencing poor mental health. Here's what the research says. This is so interesting. The studies, and this is just one of them, indicate that adolescents that have a strong cultural ethnic identity, and part of that is bringing your spark and being able to exercise that, are less prone to mental health challenges and do better academically. So this is the inverse of what we see from the sparks literature. Young people who focus on their sparks have a decrease in depression, increase in academic achievement. This is looking at it from another perspective. So, let's have a little conversation with another neighbor. I want to encourage you to move around a little bit. We're trying to build community here tonight. We're going to wrap up soon, so let's have a briefer conversation, and then we're going to get to the QR code and you sharing your insights about the whole enchilada. So I want to encourage you to just have a brief conversation with someone you don't know. We're going to talk about what has been covered so far that stands out, and what are your ideas to improve personal well-being. Before we talked about community well-being. Now we're talking about how do we help individuals to meet their basic needs and to let their sparks of passion really be fanned into a flame. All right, I'm giving you 2 minutes. Got to move quick and go.
How's it going, sir?
Well, how do you put that out? Because these kids, they're going to be on some type of subsistence. How do we create that value?
¿Quiere hablar con el hombre o no? ¿Pueden entender? Sí, sí. A lot going in your mind? I'm glad you're here. It's very important that your voice is very important. You know, we're creating, as I mentioned, like a well-being committee for the district. We want parents to be a part of it, grandparents. And so, to have you all consider like joining us, and like, you know, being that white hot, the ones who catch everybody else on fire. But you heard his insight. He's like, okay, we're teachers need to connect outside of school. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Yeah, but that's beautiful.
It's important. Rails falling down.
Yeah, I worked on I'm trying to set this up. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 5 times. All right, so we're gonna do quick round robin. I want to hear your comments. I'm giving you 15 seconds. After 2 minutes, we're gonna keep moving because I want to respect everybody's time. Some of the insights that came up. All right, 15 seconds. Stephen, go.
I'm going to say I like to look at what the rest of the world is doing in the educational system. And I look at like Japan and China and Germany and the Swiss, and I see their educational system is so far beyond what ours is. We are missing the boat, and that didn't used to be the case. Yeah. So we need to find out why we're missing that boat and why they're excelling so much more than what we are.
Okay, the alarm's going off. All right, thank you very much. And part of that is what we're doing here, right? We're basing some of these strategies off of international models, and if you know of other international models, let's incorporate those. Other ideas, insights that emerge around building personal well-being.
Communicate with your kid.
Okay, say a little more. In 10 seconds.
Ask questions.
Hmm.
How was your day to start? Did you learn? I asked, what did you learn today that you didn't already learn?
What did you learn today that you didn't, what was it, didn't know before?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna use that one for my kids. You say, how was your day? They always say, good. And you're like, okay, tell me more. Okay, others, yes.
Yeah, I guess for me, one of the things that really emerges is that I think it just feels like underneath a lot of the conversation, there's kind of a us and them mentality.
Okay.
And somehow, some way, we got to get to a place where we recognize that it's about all of us together, and it's something that we work on every day together.
Moving towards us, not us, them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, no one left behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And something I still need to work on is learning how to listen instead of just talking all the time.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah. All right.
Hey, he's got your chain.
Anyone else? 15 seconds, quick, I know. Yeah.
Be a little controversial here. Taking a little bit off the staff's plates so that when we do need to attend things after school, it's not as stressed for us to attend a student's game or something like that. So, like the 2 hours I spend almost every night at home working, I could spend that at a football game or at a soccer game or at a dance recital instead.
Sure. Am I hearing you correctly? Are you saying like having some incentives for staff to invest in this way? Am I understanding you right or no?
No, less
stress.
Less stress, less paperwork, less things that are required of me based off of all the requirements that exist.
Educational involvement with the kids.
So less stress, less paperwork, so that you can focus on the relationship building.
Yes.
Am I hearing you right?
Yes.
Yes. Again, there's a lot of really great ideas that are emerging in this conversation. And again, this is not the game, this is the huddle. And so part of this huddle is going to be the creation of these well-being committees so that we can prioritize and strategize and operationalize these ideas and continue to look at how data is being impacted by these policies and practice changes. Yes?
It's the burnout prevention conversation. You want us at more. I have 3 kids. I am super invested in this community. I have a union grad. I'm about to have a Vista grad, and I got 1 more coming up. But my babies matter too. And I can't burn out.
Sure.
Because I'm taking care of everyone else's kids. So how do we find that balance? Because so many of our educators are moms, dads, single parents, grandmas, grandparents.
That still comes back to what she's saying is parental involvement with their child.
Yeah, so that, but are you an educator as well?
And a district leader.
Yeah, okay.
You know my baby, you know Quinn from below.
Yeah, so the burnout prevention strategy, I love that. So just more support. I see, now I gotta give myself 15 seconds. More support in keeping that work-life balance.
As that, it's a constant part of the conversation.
Yeah. All right, so with your permission, can we do the final stop here?
Yeah.
All right. Talking about youth voice. Again, young people having leadership, feeling comfortable suggesting activities, rules, helping organize events, policies, community problem solving, civic involvement, planning to be or already being involved in political and civic life. And part of that could just be, getting people's ideas and thoughts and organizing trash pickups if that's an issue, right? There's different ways where people can feel like they're participants in their democracy.
But you can't tell the kids you're going to have them group up
Yeah.
And they gonna go pick up trash, because you ain't got no kids.
No doubt, no doubt. It's got to come from them. It's got to come from them. Right. But here's what the research says from the Annenberg Institute. The youth-led engagement led to increased student attendance, improved test scores, higher graduation rates, increased college-going aspirations. How many of us like these outcomes? So the data from the district indicates that 64% of students reported feeling a part of their community, understanding the issues at hand, and sharing their voices and opinions to engage and improve their community. 64% is not bad, it's good, but it can also be improved. Amen? Also, looking at this construct of hope, this was the lowest scoring construct in the survey. Findings suggest that only 41% of high school students report being hopeful about their future. Think about that for a second. That's 59%. The research says that one of the things that attacks hope is depression and grief, right? How many of us know our young people are dealing with some depression and some grief these days? Okay? So this is where we transition. I want to invite you to pull out your phone. Hopefully you got a smartphone, and not like my mother a couple years back, she had a dumb phone forever. I had to help her upgrade to the smartphone. I want to invite you to pull it out, pull up this QR code, and share some of your insights and thoughts about how to improve overall well-being in the school and or district. Raise your hand if you're having trouble.
I'll be honest, I don't know how to do that.
Okay, I'll help you.
I'm going back to old school.
Okay. I'll help you.
Where's your camera?
So I think you're taking a picture of it. At the bottom, you see that.
I do mine with my camera.
See it popping up. Looks like right there. Right, look at this. Voila! It's like, man, this technology is being utilized.
Teaching.
Yeah, there's teaching. Are you able to access it?
Oh, I can, but.
Yeah. So I just want to, you got it? Okay, I just want to invite you to quickly fill this out. It shouldn't take you very long. It's an open-ended question. And then we just want a little information about your background. Y'all okay if I play a little background music while you do this? Are you having trouble? Okay. Do you mind if I email you or text you? What's your best number?
It's 480 653.
You said 653?
Yeah. 5578.
Just text me. Tell me that comes
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, is this for you to get to know the parents or the students?
through. This is to help support your students in their well-being. And then we got another quick QR code that's trying to better support parents. We're going to do that in just a second.
You've got a question on there that maybe some of the people can't answer. You can't go forward if you don't answer it.
Okay.
And that is that which school does your child attend?
Oh.
My kids are
Yeah.
in their 40s and 50s.
So they're not attending any.
So that's what the school of life. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good. So we'll have our survey people make that adjustment in the future. It's not coming up?
Mine's about a minute and a half, but not, my smartphone's old, so
Oh, okay.
it's not, it's 18.
Would you be comfortable if I emailed it to you or text it?
According to Apple, it doesn't work.
All right. What's your best number? 425.
So what did you put down?
I didn't put down anything. I put
They don't have redneck? Do they have other? You could fill in the box. Yeah, it's a good question. Raise your hand if you are a parent of a student in the district. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Raise your hand if you're just a parent of kids that may be in this district in the future, or a grandparent. All right. All right. Yeah, we got some parents in the house. Okay, Cornelia. So. Yeah, you're right. And this is the huddle, so we can build a handful. Sam Cook, don't get me started, Sam Cook. So here's another piece that I kind of want to wrap up with, and that is this. There's a lot of literature that suggests that it's very difficult for our students to be healthy, whole, and well if our staff is not healthy, whole, and well.
Okay, true.
And it's very difficult for our children and our babies to be healthy, whole, and well if we as parents and grandparents and concerned community members are not healthy, whole, and well. So we're taking a very bold step. It's not a whole journey, but it's a step, and we're committed to continuing taking steps. And that is, we want to understand what are the metrics that matter to you and your well-being. And with your permission, we want to co-create a survey that matters to you and assess where you're at with your well-being with the intention of dreaming and planning and having a more formal and consistent huddle and understanding how Casa Grande Union High School District can support parent well-being as well. Some of the ideas that emerged were brilliant in terms of meeting parents where they're at. Maybe doing a parent university. Having parents come into things that are relevant, going out in the community and connecting with them where they're at. So this is a step in that direction. So I want to invite you. This is another QR code. I'm sorry. We've got too many QR codes. But this is one way for you to rate the metrics that matter to you and for us to continue to follow up with this conversation in a real way. So I want to invite you to pull this up. You don't have to do this right now. I know we're a little bit over time. But I want to encourage you to please, please, please fill this out tonight. Before you get ready for bed, make sure you hit send so we can know what metrics matter to you and continue the conversation. So I'm going to give you a moment to do this. And if you're having trouble, just raise your hand. I'll come by and I can shoot you a text. Yeah, okay. I think I still have it in here.
Yeah.
And what are the last four?
5578.
All right. Gonna text this to everybody. Just text.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. Anybody else having trouble? Steven, you got it okay?
All this go to the NSA.
Nah, we're keeping this at the CGUHSD, not the NSA. All right. So next steps is formulating a well-being committee or committees, plural, at the district and school levels. And again, I just want to thank you all for coming out because, as you know, research suggests parent involvement in their students and young people in the community leads to decreases in absences and behavioral issues and increases in academic achievement, graduation, test scores, and successful matriculation into post-secondary opportunities. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been wonderful.
So before you take off, I do want to thank Roberto. He has been in Arizona this year 11 days now. He started in July. And when he got here on Monday, I said, you're about ready to find out why we put up with July. As he's been here this week. And so, but that's 11 days that he's been away from his beautiful wife and his 3 kids. And although he has a very inspirational story and is a phenomenal educator, he's even more of an amazing parent and husband. And so I've gotten to know the family through our work together. And he's like a brother to me now. We look forward to working with him. But I wanted just to share a couple things about our strategic planning. We have 3 board members here tonight. We have Steve Hayes, we have Richard Wilkie, we have Steve Hunt. I know we have 1 board candidate, Boots Hawks is here. I don't know if we have any other candidates here for the board tonight. But we also have somebody that submitted, as well as Bob Shogren submitted for the open vacancy, but I don't believe Bob is running for a board seat. And so my board has been wonderful in understanding where it is that we need to go. One of the things we've been talking about is the knowing versus doing gap. What Roberto talked about tonight, really, we know what works. It's putting it into action and doing it. And so that's one thing we're looking at. We've had committees looking at kind of an instructional bill of rights. When we talk about what it is and how best to meet students, we're really defining that and really looking at how to achieve and get our instruction up to those levels. As Nathan said, our teachers are working hard. They're giving everything they got. And so how do we work with our educators to make sure they have the support they need and they're able to focus on the things that truly are going to increase student achievement. I've already shared with our administrators, our job is to make sure all of our students graduate college and career ready. And we're saying all because we don't want to accept failure in any one of our students. Right now we're about 78% graduation rate, and so to get there is going to be a monumental task in doing that. But that's the goal that we're working at. And so Roberto also used a great analogy tonight about the huddle. And so one of the things the district is making, and part of an effort is bringing a director next year on board who's really going to be focusing on these committee work. It's really looking at 3, number 1, student engagement, and working with how do we engage students more effectively, professional learning. And I chose the word learning rather than development because development is usually at an event, but learning is ongoing, all of us learning. And then third is support of our learning community, which is everybody in here. And so we're bringing that person on board. I've shifted some priorities in other places. So although it is a position that we haven't had in the past, it's not adding to our staffing. It's taking some other positions from other ways. So it's a net gain 0 financially. But the district right now is in pretty good financial shape. And we're getting ready to go into negotiations and really talk about, how do we leverage the strong financial place that we're in to make sure we're getting the best staff and getting the best resources, provide an enriching environment, a safe environment, and all those things for our students. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. And so our board has been very helpful. Roberto has been very helpful as well. But this is not something that's going to be an event. It's an ongoing thing. Not only just the committee for the well-being, but looking at things through instruction, performance, and all those things. So again, thank you for coming tonight. Have a safe trip home, and obviously we'll be around if you have any specific questions you want to ask any of us. So thank you.